Have you ever wondered what people 2,000 years ago considered to be the most incredible, most breathtaking achievements of humanity? Well, that's exactly what we're doing today. We're taking a trip back in time to explore that very list, the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
But here's the thing, this list comes with a massive mystery. You have these 7 unbelievable structures spread all across the ancient world. But today, only one is still with us. So what happened to the other 6? And what is it about that lone survivor that makes it so special? Let's find out.
And yeah, you guessed it, that lone survivor is, of course, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, what's truly mind-blowing is that it's not only the last one standing, it's also the oldest wonder on the entire list by a long shot. That just makes its survival even more amazing.
I mean, just try to wrap your head around the scale of this thing. We're talking 146 meters tall. It was built way back around 2500 BC to be a tomb for the pharaoh Khufu, and it held the record for the tallest man-made structure on Earth for almost 4,000 years. Unbelievable.
And you know, let's clear up a huge misconception right now. These pyramids, they weren't built by slaves. All the evidence we have shows they were built by a massive, really well-organized workforce of tens of thousands of paid Egyptian laborers. And get this, originally, they were covered in polished white limestone. So they would have just blazed, shining in the desert sun.
Okay, so now let's pivot to the first of our lost wonders. And unlike the pyramids, which were all about power and the afterlife, this next one, well, the story says it was a monument born from love. So the legend goes, around 600 BC, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II built this absolutely stunning tiered garden for his wife, Amytis. See, she missed the green, lush mountains of her homeland, so he decided to bring the mountains to her, creating this green paradise right in the middle of the desert.
But here's the really wild part about the gardens. They're the only wonder on the list that historians are still arguing about whether it even existed. We have no definitive Babylonian records, no ruins have ever been found. It's a total mystery. If it was real, the best guess is that a powerful earthquake wiped it off the map. All right, so from a wonder built for a queen, we're now moving on to 3 monuments that weren't for mortals at all. These were colossal, truly awe-inspiring tributes built for the gods of the Greek pantheon.
So, we're talking about 3 incredible structures here, all tied directly to Greek worship. You had a gigantic statue for Zeus, the king of the gods, a massive marble temple for Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and a towering bronze Colossus of Helios, the sun god. But as we're about to see, their fates couldn't have been more different.
People said the Temple of Artemis was just the most beautiful building on the planet. I mean, listen to this. Antipater of Sidon, the guy who actually made the list of wonders, said it made all the others look dull in comparison. But that beauty made it a target. In 356 BC, some guy, literally just to make a name for himself, burned the whole thing to the ground. It was rebuilt, but sadly it was destroyed for good centuries later when the Roman Empire turned its back on the old gods. And what about Zeus? Well, inside his temple was a 42-foot-tall statue of him on a throne, made from gold and ivory by the master sculptor Phidias. It was so spectacular that the Roman Emperor Caligula actually tried to steal it so he could chop off Zeus's head and replace it with his own. Luckily, his plan was cut short when he was assassinated. The statue's final fate is a bit of a mystery, but it probably disappeared when its temple was shut down as paganism fell out of favor.
Now, the Colossus of Rhodes, this was a statement. It wasn't just a statue, it was a 30-meter-tall symbol of pure victory. After fighting off a huge invasion, the people of Rhodes took the enemy's abandoned weapons, melted them down, and built this incredible monument to their sun god, Helios. It stood proudly at their harbor for only 54 years before a massive earthquake just snapped it right at the knees.
Okay, our last 2 lost wonders weren't really for gods, and they weren't for love. Nope, these were all about raw, unfiltered human power, wealth, and the burning desire to leave a legacy that would last forever.
The Mausoleum at Halicarnassus was so incredibly grand that it's the reason we have the word mausoleum today. It was meant to be the final resting place for a ruler named Mausolus, but he died really early into its construction. But his wife, Artemisia, was so devoted that she finished the project, creating this 45-meter-tall masterpiece that stood for over 1,000 years.
And speaking of sheer height, our final wonder was an absolute titan, the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Just look at this chart. At around 130 meters, it was second only to the Great Pyramid, an absolute giant of the ancient world.
And this thing wasn't just for show, it was a critical piece of ancient infrastructure. For more than 1,000 years, a fire burning at its peak guided ships safely into the port of Alexandria, which was one of the busiest in the world. It was a true beacon of civilization until, like so many of the others, a series of earthquakes finally brought it tumbling down.
So, we've seen these magnificent structures, but we're still left with that big question from the beginning. Why did they fall? What were the forces, both natural and human, that brought these incredible marvels to ruin? Well, it didn't happen all at once. The wonders vanished over a huge span of time, almost 2,000 years. From the arsonist who destroyed the temple of Artemis in 356 BC, all the way to the final collapse of the Mausoleum in the 15th century. They were claimed one by one.
And when you really break it down, a very clear pattern starts to emerge. Sure, human actions like arson and neglects definitely played a part. But the #1 destroyer of the ancient wonders? It was the sheer, unstoppable power of the Earth itself. The Eastern Mediterranean is basically an earthquake hotspot, and so 4 and maybe even 5 of the 6 lost wonders were ultimately destroyed by them.
But you know what? The story doesn't totally end in rubble. The legacy of these structures is so powerful that even today, there are serious proposals to rebuild both the Lighthouse of Alexandria and the Colossus of Rhodes. It just goes to show you how these ancient dreams still capture our imagination. And that brings us right back to where we started, back to the one that survived. Why did the pyramids last when everything else crumbled? Maybe this ancient proverb says it best. They were built with a kind of stability, a scale, and a simple, brutally effective geometry that made them almost immune to the forces that claimed all the others. They weren't just built to last. It seems they were built to laugh at time itself.